A very good day, good morning, good afternoon to all of you. Thanks for joining our webinar today on avoiding the pitfalls of predatory publishing with journal citation reports. My name is Julian and I'll be your presenter for today. Now, some housekeeping before we go into the main agenda. If you do have any questions, feel free to type those questions into the chat, especially if you have any burning questions for me with regards to journal citation reports. The session is also being recorded, so that's why all your microphones are on mute. So that's why questions have to be taken through the chat menu. Now, the recording will be shared with all of you tomorrow, and subsequently, if you have any further questions, there will be an email contact in that follow-up email that you can reach out to me. All right. If you have any technical issues through the session, I do apologize in advance if you can't hear any audio, but do just check that your speakers are adjusted and assigned to WebEx. Right. Otherwise, if you can't hear me, you might have to review the recording at a later time. All right, so let's proceed with the session proper and find out how you can best select the journals to suit your manuscript. To start us off, I always like to show some statistics around scholarly publishing. And on this slide here, you would note that there are currently over 48,000 plus scholarly journals published globally. And if you think about the number of issues, the number of volumes, the number of articles per journal, and perhaps limit it to your own discipline or your own specialization, we are talking about a large number of content. So now, even more than ever, researchers like yourself, your library, and even your institution will find it even more challenging. Hang on a minute. I think some of you are not able to see the slides. Well, I think most of you can see, and I did share. So, and it does say that I'm sharing. Okay, great. Thanks. Thanks, Mary. Thanks, Kit Ping. All right. So that's why it's even more than ever that you need a tool that can guide you to identify the most impactful journals in your discipline, the best fit journals to subscribe to, and so on. Right? Let's not think about the numbers first then. Okay. What about throwing in some anomalous publishing behavior and also predatory journals? Journals of questionable publishing practices are on the rise. As you can see here on this slide from The Economist back in 2020, 4 years down the road now, I think we are still seeing this phenomenon of the large number of unethical publishing behaviors in journals. And this is across all disciplines like health, maths, physical sciences, economics, biology. So researchers, especially the early career researchers, need to be even more stringent in selecting the journals that are trustworthy. Now, some of you might feel that, okay, that's fine. I know how to identify these questionable journals, but you also need to pay attention to things like retraction. Do some of these journals have a high level of retraction rates in recent times? And what are the reasons? What's the context behind those retractions? These are also points that researchers like yourself will have to consider when identifying some of these journals. I mentioned a lot about the unethical publishing behaviors. And some of you might say, oh, I already know all the very important journals in my discipline. So I should be able to recognize these and differentiate between the real ones and the fake ones. Now, there are many, many open access journals that are very impactful and require high article processing charges. Now, I'm not saying that high article processing charges are bad, but because of these high article processing charges, there are a lot of fake journals that pretend to be these very established journals just by cloning their website. So they clone these journals' websites and pretend that they are the real journals. They collect that article processing charge from you, and they publish your work on these duplicated platforms. That is one of the scariest things out there. So to me, as a researcher, I feel that if you have spent 6 months, a year, or even more to do your research, make sure that your submission is to the right platform, the right journal, the right URL, and safeguard your own content. Okay? Because there's no law in the world currently that protects you or your article from being published in an non-recognized journal. So if you unknowingly send your manuscript to a journal that is fake, okay, and that fake journal publishes the content, I don't think it's that easy to retract or pull back your manuscript to be sent to another journal. Okay. So there are many tools out there to guide you on how to screen for these unethical publishing behaviors in journals, how to screen for predatory journals. Okay. This is a very simple checklist that I think all of you can find on the internet. It will give you guidance on what you should be looking for when you are identifying a good journal. So things like whether you or your colleagues know the journal is important. It sounds very simple, all right? But when you have a timeline and you have a deadline to publish, okay, sometimes all common sense goes out the window, right? So just make sure that you or your colleagues have been reading the journal, you know the URL, all right? And also check that you can easily identify and contact the publisher. Who is the ultimate publisher of that journal? Then is the journal clear about the type of peer review it uses? You need to be able to identify what is the peer review policy. Is it single blind, double blind, or even now there's more and more open peer review? If it's single blind or double blind, how do you find the evidence to show that they have actually done that peer review process? One of those telltale signs is to look at the acceptance dates of those manuscripts and then the final published dates. Most of the time, peer review process will take at least 2 to 3 months. So just make sure that the time frame is a reasonable time frame. Okay. Then articles index in services that you use. So I'm not talking about Google Scholar or just Google. All right. Make sure that you are able to identify these content types within subscribed databases from your library. So make sure that from your library's portals or websites, you're able to identify these journals directly, identify the articles that belong to those journals. Then is it clear what fees will be charged? So besides the article processing charges, some journals will collect additional fees for things like color processing and so on. So make sure that the journal declares what these additional fees are and when they will be collected. Then do you recognize the editorial board members? Again, it's a very straightforward question. You remember that 48,000 plus journals in my first slide? So all these journals are competing for you and your manuscript. So how best to appeal to you to submit your manuscript to them? It's basically showing that they have a very established editorial board. And some of these journals will have very highly cited researchers, very well cited researchers, and renowned researchers in that field. So you probably need to do a bit of investigation to confirm that these established researchers are indeed editorial board members of that journal that you were looking at. How do you confirm that? One suggestion is to do some investigations on those affiliation portals. So like the university websites, public profiles of the researchers, looking at ORCID and so on, just to make sure that they have said that they are editorial board members of those journals. Then if it's a publisher that has multiple journals, check whether they are part of the Committee of Publication Ethics COPE, because if they are part of an recognized industry initiative, it adds a bit more credentials to that journal. If the journal is open access, check whether they are included in the Directory of Open Access Journals, DOAJ. Right. Now, this is a very simple checklist, but even just going through this checklist by yourself, it will take some time. And researchers are always very time poor. It is better or more efficient if you are able to use a tool that has already done these comprehensive curation for you. And that's where the Web of Science core collection comes in. Now, we do hear that many researchers will say, oh, but Web of Science doesn't cover everything. And there's a reason. The reason is because we want to avoid including questionable journals and predatory content. So the Web of Science core collection is designed to be selective in its coverage. So for journals that want to be included into the Web of Science core collection, they all have to fulfill our 24 quality criteria at least. So on this slide here, these are the 24 quality criteria that we use to evaluate the journals before they are included into the ecosystem. If you take a closer look at some of these criteria, so for example, presence of peer review policy, presence of ethics statements, editorial affiliations, scholarly content, editorial board composition, peer review, all these were part of that checklist that I showed you 2 slides ago. So we already do that check for you and even more. We make sure that those editorial board members are valid, because it's not just about including a highly cited researcher. Is he or she an expert in that discipline within that journal? Because if the journal is on veterinary science, for example, you include a editorial board member who is in, I would say, nursing. Okay, then you go like, what has that nursing expert got to do with veterinary science? Okay, maybe nursing in veterinary care, maybe. But then what if you see somebody in, let's say, quantum physics, all right, in a veterinary science journal? Then you go like, that's a bit odd. So we do all these different checks for you to make sure that we have already covered all bases and and we are showing you the trusted content. Okay. I see that Safwan also gave a suggestion. Thank you very much. So yes, if you do see the reviewer's name in the final published paper, it would also indicate that it has undergone peer review. Now, whether the peer reviewer's name is shown also depends on the peer review policy of the journal. So if it's an open peer review, yes, the peer reviewer's name will be there. If it's a single blind, yes, the peer reviewer's name might be there as well. Okay. All right, so I've explained about why you should be using the Web of Science and using this to help you to navigate the large pool of content or journals out there. Then your next question would be, okay, that's well and good. Can I know where to find that list of journals that is indexed in Web of Science? Okay. The first port of call is usually the master journal list. Okay, it's the URL is mjl.clarivate.com, and this is where we update monthly the list of journals that are indexed in the Web of Science core collection. Once you go into the portal, you can use the search field to kind of find identify the journal name that you want to verify. If you can't find the journal in master journal list, it means that it's not indexed in Web of Science. All right. If you find it and it's an exact match, of that name that you have entered, or the ISSN, okay, then yes, that journal is indexed in Web of Science. So if all you need to know is whether a journal is indexed in Web of Science or not, you can use the master journal list. However, the master journal list does not provide you with things like the journal impact factor or the quartile of the journal. Now, within the master journal list, we also have some additional information for you to export so that you can understand what has changed each month. So there is a download section that allows you to download a list of journals in each of the core collection indexes, or download some the monthly change documents that would highlight this spreadsheet. Now, this spreadsheet will tell you which journals have been newly indexed in Web of Science that month, and also which journals have been removed and for what reason. So we have all these different reasons for delisting. So we have editorial delisting, which means that the journal had been re-evaluated, but it no longer met our quality criteria, and therefore it was removed from the Web of Science core collection. Then we also have production delisting. What this means is that we have not been receiving content from that publisher for a while already. So it to us it doesn't make sense to continue indexing this journal because that journal might have ceased, for example, and we were not made aware. It also tells you the quality of the journal. So if it no longer gives us the content, then it poses a question on its validity as well. Okay. So things like title changes, ceased titles, they will also be highlighted in this change document. Sometimes I find this little on hold button next to the journal name. When you see this, please go to this journal with caution, okay? Because we have flagged them for reevaluation because of concerns that have been raised about its quality. So we do receive feedback from the ground, like from researchers like yourself, to highlight that, hey, this journal has this issue. You feel that there's a need to be reevaluation for reevaluation to be done, and we take this very seriously. So when we do hear these feedback from multiple sources, we will flag these journals to be reevaluated. Okay. Upon reevaluation, if the journal continues to maintain our quality criteria, they will still remain in Web of Science. Otherwise, they will be removed. All right. So some of you have asked for the sign-in link for master journal list. I'm going to type the URL into the chat. So the master journal list does not require a subscription. Okay, so anyone can kind of go into master journal list and access it. The only thing is that you will need a Web of Science subscription to download the journal lists. Okay, thanks, Menudin. All right, so master journal list you can use to verify whether a journal is indexed in the Web of Science. Then we have the journal citation reports. Now, what's the difference between the journal citation reports list and the master journal list? Master journal list is updated monthly. So every month, if there's a new journal, it will be included in the master journal list. If you need the journal impact factor and the quartiles of the journals, you go to journal citation reports. Now, the journal citation reports is a subscription database. So if any of you are not sure whether your institution has a subscription to journal citation reports, do reach out to your library and check. Okay. The journal citation reports is a report that is published every year in June. It will include the journal impact factors and the quartiles of the journals indexed in the Web of Science core collection up to a cutoff point in the prior year. So say, for example, This latest report was launched in June this year, 2025, but it will only cover journals indexed probably until or included into Web of Science until December 2024. Okay, so journals that have been newly included this year have not been included into the journal citation reports yet. Those new journals will be next year. Okay, so why is there a cutoff date? There is a cutoff date because we need to calculate the journal impact factor and the quartile of the journals. Then some of you will say, why can't you calculate everything on a monthly basis? Can you imagine how that will affect your publishing outputs and the way that your institution measures your output? It will be a bit like a stock market, right? So what we do is we will always have a cutoff for the JCR so that the data is static and stable for the year. Okay, so master journal lists will cover new journals indexed in Web of Science, and you use it to verify journals that are indexed in Web of Science. Journal citation reports used to identify journals that have a journal impact factor this year and a quartile, and other journal metrics that will help you to decide whether the journal is the best home for your manuscript. Okay. So the journal citation report holds multiple indicators for the journal, not just the journal impact factor and quartiles, but also other metrics that would show you the influence of the journal, also things like its citation relationships with other journals, and so on. Okay. This gives you transparency on the quality and the impact of these journals. All right. Now, these two indicators that I'm showing on the screen are just two of those indicators that I've mentioned. Everybody's familiar with the journal impact factor, but a few years ago, we introduced another indicator called the journal citation indicator, JCI. Why did we introduce this new indicator? The reason is because sometimes you might want to be comparing journals across different disciplines. We don't want to, it is important to normalize the citation behavior of the journals if you want to compare this impact. Okay, the journal impact factor only covers 1 year citation, whereas the journal citation indicator covers 4 years citations. So these, the JCI will be a more stable indicator if you want to see which of the quartile 1 journals are more impactful, for example. Later on in my walkthrough, I will actually be explaining to you how you can make use of these two indicators together to make some decisions on which journal to select. Okay. Now, one thing that I wanted to also highlight, which were some of the recent changes in journal citation reports over the last 2 years, was that over 3 or 4 years ago, journal citation reports only had journal impact factors for the Science Citation Index expanded journals, Social Science Citation Index journals. So we felt that that wasn't inclusive enough. So we have introduced the journal impact factor to all 4 journal indexes, which means to say SCIE, SSCI, AHCI, and ESCI journals all have a journal impact factor now. All indexes in all journals in SCIE, SSCI, and ESCI will also have a quartile this already. Okay, so that's why we needed to give more information out to institutions so that they can make adjustments to their criterias or recognitions or KPIs. Right? Because like what Safwan mentioned, some institutions do still currently don't recognize ESCI journals, but from last year actually onwards, all journals in Web of Science core collection all have a journal impact factor and quartile. Okay. Now, what else has been changed in this year's JCR? Okay, so we have changed the inclusion criteria for content. So we have excluded citations to and from retracted records in the journal citation reports, GIF calculation. So the GIF no longer takes content that has been retracted. Okay. Now, for the big bulk of the journals in JCR, this has little influence on its ultimate GIF and quartile, because if you have a robust enough number of publications and citations, these retracted publications should not affect your journal impact factors too much. However, if the journal has a very small volume, and out of which one or two are retracted publications, this could affect the ultimate GIF and quartile. Okay. Okay. Now, the number of journals covered in JCR this year is 22249. Okay, it's a fixed number, as I mentioned before, because we always have a cutoff date for journals indexed up to a certain time in December in the prior year. Okay, we also suppressed 20 journals from receiving their GIF this year. They have not been removed from Web of Science, but because we found that they have excessive journal self-citations, we have given them some warning. And if next year they don't make changes, then they might be removed. Okay, but they are suppressed from receiving this year's journal impact factor. So I'll also show you where to find this list later on. Okay. So I've already briefly mentioned about the changes to this year's GIF calculation. So we no longer include retracted publication citations and their citations. Okay. Okay. Before I go into the live demonstration on how to make use of JCR and what are some of the important metrics to consider to find the best fit journal for your manuscript, if you are keen to export data in bulk, or if you want to see the JCR metrics in some of our other solutions, we do have those integrations within things like Web of Science, ProQuest platforms, and Alma. So if you're using things like Web of Science and you see the journal name, okay, and your institution does subscribe to JCR, then you can immediately see the journal impact factor on the Web of Science platform. Same thing for the ProQuest platform and the Alma platforms. If you want to export data in bulk, so we have 22,000 plus journals. Some institutions want to export all 22,000 plus journals, GIF and quartiles at one go. Okay, we no longer sell the data set, but you can subscribe to the journals API to retrieve the data in bulk. Right. So before we go to questions, let me jump to the journal citation reports. There's a question from KS Tan. How does one evaluate impact factors of ESCI journals? You might want to elaborate on what you mean by evaluate impact factors of ESCI journals. So ESCI journals all meet our 24 quality criteria in Web of Science. So they are all quality journals. They have received their impact factors since last year, and the way that their journal impact factors are calculated is the same way as any other journal in the Web of Science Citation Index Expanded or the Social Science Citation Index. So there is no difference between the way that we calculate the impact factors of ESCI journals. Okay, so if you want to compare impact factors of ESCI journals, I can show you how you can do that in JCR, but take note that it's best to limit or filter the results to that specific specialization you're looking at before doing these comparisons of the impact factors, because the impact factors are not a normalized indicator. What do I mean by this? It means that if you see a business journal, the journal impact factor might be far lower than a journal in physics. So a journal in physics might have a huge GIF, and the reason is because of the citation behavior. So usually physics disciplines get more citations, and therefore your journal impact factors become higher. Okay. All right. For those of you who have comments about your institution not recognizing certain indexes, I'm afraid that I can only suggest, okay, but I have really no power to influence how your institution would like to recognize. Because the reason why I think some institutions have indicated that certain indexes and quartiles are recognized only is because there is a study that was shown that for those SCIE and SSCI journals in Q1, if institutions publish more in those journals, they tend to get higher impact, as in the citation impact is higher. So the chances of you receiving citations for if you get published in those journals will be higher. Because those journals are more established, they have wider networks, and therefore will be uh, uh, more influential. But because now we also recognize ESCI journals and their quartiles, some disciplines do see that in that specific discipline, ESCI journal can be a Q1 journal as well. So we can only give you information to highlight to your institutions, and hopefully soon they will change these criteria to recognize. Okay. All right. So yes, Pang, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, Pankodi. Yes, I will be showing you how to pick the right journals based on the field. So if any of you have some fields that you want to share with me, I can pick a few to use as an example. Okay. But first, let me show you what can be done within the master journal list and the JCR. So if you go, if you want to check whether you have access to JCR, please check with your library. So this webinar is an open webinar, so the multiple institutions users are on this call. So just check with your institution's library to see whether you have access. For master journal list, okay, I'm just going to go to that website first. So this is the master journal list. From here, you can just type in the journal's name. So if I put in International Journal of Hydrogen Energy and search the journal, I will also want to filter this down to core collection. So on the left, you can filter this down to SCIE, SSCI, or AHCI and ESCI. If the journal is in Web of Science core collection, it will show that an exact match is found, and you can verify that it is in SCIE. Okay, from this page, there is a journal profile page, but just take note, this only gives you some basic information about the journal and also a URL to the journal's website. Okay, so here you can go to the journal's website to make sure that you're not falling prey to clone journals. Okay, and then you will only see the journal impact factor if you have a JCR subscription. Okay, and then if they have information about things like the article processing charges, if it's an open access journal, these would be also here on the master journal list. All right, so that's the master journal list. On the journal citation reports, you can do the same thing. You can always put in the journal's name. Right? And if the journal is indeed in JCR, it will show as journal name, one result, and then you can click through to view the journal's profile. So every journal in the JCR will have its own journal profile page, and to check whether this journal is receiving the latest journal impact factor, always see that the JCR year is 2024. So the latest year is 2024. If you see that the JCR year stops somewhere in 2021, for example, and there's no 2024, it means that the journal would have been removed from the Web of Science, or it might have changed title or merged. So we'll always include further information on the journal profile page to let you know what has happened to that journal. Okay. So on this page, you will also be able to see the journal's publisher's name and also the publication frequency of that journal. You can also look at the current journal impact factor and also the 5-year trend of its journal impact factor. Okay. If you are interested to view the calculations, there is always a link to view the calculation here. And what are the articles that have been cited most in the journal this year? So these are the items that have contributed to the calculation of the journal impact factor, and it can become a kind of a short list of articles for you to read. And you can also view the abstracts in Web of Science to understand the scope of the content. So looking at the citable items will give you an idea of the aims and scopes of the journal and whether your own research topic will fit into this journal itself. Okay. Then you have the journal citation indicator right here. This is what I was talking about in my slides. So JCI of 1 is always the global average. So if you do see a journal that has a JCI below 1, it means that the journal is performing below average. If you see that the JCI is above 1, like in this case 1.2, then it shows that it's performing 1.2 times better than average. Okay, so the higher the JCI, the better. Then we have the citation distribution chart that gives you an idea of what type of content gets cited more in this journal. And also any component of the journal that is open access. Then we have the rank by journal impact factor. So most institutions will recognize the quartile by journal impact factor. So here, this journal is in Q1 under chemistry physical. Under electrochemistry, it is also Q1. Now, in the event that the journal is a Q2 in another separate category, at the end of the day, most institutions still recognize that journal as a Q1 journal. Okay. Now, the rank is also available for JCI, but this is not as widely used at the moment. So that's why I need to make sure that you are not confused between the GIF quartile and the JCI quartile. Then we have some metrics on the citation network. So we have the cited half-life. This means that documents published 4.5 years ago are still being cited this year in this journal. So this gives you some kind of indication on the longevity of receiving citation counts. So this allows you to kind of see if you manage to get your article published in this journal, how long do I have to kind of continue to receive citations? Now, of course, this also depends on the discipline, but this is a metric that can help you to quantify this aspect. Now, I think most of you would have been rejected by a journal at one point in time. But I hope you are all not dejected, because rejection from journals is, I think, part and parcel of research life. Uh, but sometimes you might be lost as to where else you can publish in. So here in the journal citation relationships, we have this colorful wheel here. So in the event that I submitted my manuscript to this journal, International Journal of Hydrogen Energy, and let's say I got rejected, okay, I can come to this journal citation relationship wheel and be able to see which other journals it has a relationship with. So I can possibly go to fuel, I can possibly go to energy, chemical energy journal, and these becomes my alternative places I can send my manuscript to. Okay, all of these journals are indexed in Web of Science. So if you can click through to any of these, it opens up a new journal profile page. Okay. Another very useful indicator that I think many researchers have not considered is our source data. Okay, what is this source data? In the calculation of our journal impact factor, we only take articles and reviews. Okay, so what we consider citable items are articles and reviews. So articles plus reviews equals to citable items. So in this case, this journal has 4,919 citable items, out of which 4,814 of them are articles, only 105 are reviews. So if your manuscript type is a review article, maybe you are up for a large competition. So the chances of you being rejected is much higher in this journal. However, if your manuscript type is an original research article, yes, you would still have a chance to be published in this journal. So the content type that it publishes is also an important consideration besides the quartile and the journal impact factor. Okay. Now, the next thing is your contributions. Many of you would say, okay, we need to know more about the aims and scopes of the journal. Okay, some journals are very detailed in its aims and scopes, some are not, right? Earlier on, I showed you the citable items list on the top of this page. That is your first avenue to look at the aims of the journal. What does it want to publish? Then the scope, which territory or which region does it cover? Okay, here you can see the countries that contribute the most to this journal. So most of them are from China, but we also cover other countries like Australia, Malaysia, Taiwan. Okay, all these are also there. So this gives you an idea of its scope based on region. So is it more UK centric, US centric, regional focused, international focused, and so on. Okay. Then if you go down, we have other indicators here. These will show you the density of the network of citations, so showing its influence around. Okay. If you want to see detailed explanations about each of these additional metrics, there's always a Learn More link. But those that I've highlighted so far are the important ones that you can start to consider first. Okay. All right. So that's the profile page of the journal. Now, the next thing is, how do you identify journals in your specific field? We have a browse by category, or you can just put in your field in the search box right there. Okay. Under the categories, we have various groups. Okay. There are 254 subject categories in Web of Science. If you want to see all 24, you can view these all here. So each of these disciplines have the number of journals next to it. All right. Now, I mentioned that ESCI journals have a quartile already. So the only journals that have an overlap discipline with an SSCI journal, SSCI category, will have its quartile. Okay, so for example, if you see that there are journals here under the humanities discipline that are pure AHCI and ESCI only, these 408 journals will not have a quartile. Okay, so AHCI journals do not have a quartile because these disciplines tend to have very, very low journal impact factor. And if you split them up by quartiles, it just doesn't make sense. Okay, so they do have a journal impact factor, but they don't have a quartile. Okay. Okay. Then if you are keen to look at, let's say, I can show you the computer science one. Okay, let me look at artificial and see the 21 groups. So let's say I'm in computer science. I want to look at artificial intelligence. Then you have the 205 journals in this category. So I can click on this 205 and see the journals. Now, let me show the default. Okay. So this is the default view of the list. And you can see here it's sorted by journal impact factor. And the very first journal is an ESCI journal that is a Q1 journal. Okay, so it is important for you to probably highlight this to also your own institutions to tell them that the additions now might not be a good proxy to the performance of the journal. Okay, the performance would be dictated usually by the GIF and the JCI. Okay, so in this case here, now you have all these 205 journals in computer science, artificial intelligence. You can include the other metrics that I've mentioned before in the slides, in my demonstration. Under customize, you can include things like percentage of articles in citable items as an example and apply. So now you can see and compare the journals accordingly. Let me just reduce the size so I can see everything in one. Okay. Now, let's say for this one, this is these are all quartile 1 journals, right? So let's say the J journal impact factor of this one. Okay, you can see here if I sort this by GIF. Okay, these are all Q1 journals. Okay, let's take a look at this view. Okay, so let's say this journal, which is at the top. All right, so let's say this one. Some of these will have very high journal impact factors, right? So let's say this one, artificial intelligence reviews. Okay, this has a journal impact factor of 13.9, whereas let me see. This one, radiology artificial intelligence, has a GIF of 13.2. Okay, not much slight difference. Okay, and artificial intelligence reviews has a higher journal impact factor. But if you take a look at the JCI, artificial intelligence review has a smaller JCI compared to radiology artificial intelligence. Okay, so if all else is the same, everything else is the same, okay, content, aims and scopes are the same, I would probably select the one that has a higher JCI. So that's how you can use both the GIF and the JCI to give you an idea of which journal is better in terms of its impact. Because JCI would kind of show you the consistency of the journal's impact over time. Okay. Now, the other indicator that I've included here is the percentage of articles in citable items. So in the first journal here, Foundations and Trends in Machine Learning, 100% of its citable items are articles. 0% are reviews. So if your manuscript type is a review, then maybe not. This journal will not be suitable. All right. But if you go down the list, you might see this one, which is completely opposite, almost completely opposite. So this journal, let me see which journal this is. Okay, widely interdisciplinary reviews, data mining and knowledge discovery. It only has 9%, 9.76% articles in the citable items. So majority of its content is reviews. So if you are writing an original research article, then this might not be suitable. Okay, so that's how you use this column here. Now, I see some questions from a question from Lillian. Can you repeat how to know the quartile? Okay, so if you see here on this screen, each journal will have its own quartiles. So the quartile is based off the total GIF. So for example here, the highest journal impact factor is 25.4 and the lowest is 0.1. So between 25.4 to 0.1, we will cut the GIF range into 4. So the top 25% of the GIF will be your quartile 1 journals. Subsequent 25% will be then your Q2 journals and so on. So that's how we determine the quartile, right? So I hope that helps answer your question and how important it is. How important it is depends on a few things, whether your institution has a KPI component to your publications. So which quartile you publish in might affect the level of recognition you get. But in terms of within JCR, the quartiles will show you which of those journals are more higher performing within that subject category. Okay. And then if you use it together with JCI, it will then make sure that you identify those that will really have a consistent impact over time. Okay. I hope that answers your question. Okay. Okay. All right, so that's how you retrieve the journals in your own discipline. If you want to export, there is an export limit though of 600 at one time. So just to make sure that you filter this down to not more than 600 journals. On the left, citation indexes. So like only if you don't want ESCI, you can just limit to SCIE, SSCI, and AHCI. Okay. All right. So I think there's another a question about access. So in the if you have more questions for me, feel free to type them in now. We have about 5 minutes for questions. Okay, but let me just answer the question about whether the university has JCR access. KS Tan, if you can let me know your institution, maybe I'll be able to advise whether your institution has a subscription. Okay, but otherwise, you can check with your university library. Okay, so access to the database usually is IP authenticated. So meaning that you have to be on campus or you have to sign in via the Open Athens or single sign-on through your various organizations. And that's why I mentioned that it's best for you to check with your library. They will be able to advise. So KS Tan, yes, UM has access to JCR, UM library, off campus. Okay, so you can go to the UM library website and then you have the A to Z online databases. Just check with the library if you're off campus, which link you should follow. But if you're on campus, you can go to A to Z, search the database for journal citation reports. This should be the, yes. So it's here, JCR, and then there is a link, and then it will take you to the Open Athens sign in, and then you sign in with your staff details. Okay, so this is an example for UM, but for Utah and the rest, I think you need to check with your libraries respectively. Okay. All right. So if you need more help, we have a resource center on the journal citation reports, which is this question mark. Just click on that and it should take you to the help section. I think earlier on I mentioned about where to find the suppressed titles. So it'll be under the help guide. So in the help guide here, there's a quick search. Just put in suppression. Okay, and you can click on title suppressions. And this would be the list of journals that have been suppressed from the JIF this year. Okay. On our resource center, there is a link to our learning portal as well. And this here, you can get our reference guides and videos and so on. Okay. If you have any suggestions for our team, feel free to provide a feedback through this same link on the resource center. It's just a quick text box. Just type it in and then submit. Okay. If a JCR subscription is not active, does it mean that the journal is failing? I don't get what you mean, KS Tan. Let me see. Biomedicines. Is that a journal? So for example, biomedicines, is this what you're asking about? So this journal is currently in Journal Impact in SCIE. Okay, so there is a journal profile page. You should be able to access it. So like I mentioned just now, go through your library's portal, sign in with Open Athens, and you can see. Okay. So you're talking about the trend, is it? So yeah, to a certain extent, if you see that the journal impact factor trend is on a decline, it can tell you that the journal's impact is not exactly performing very well over the last few years. And if the JCI is less than 1, it's also a sign that it's not giving good impact at the moment. So it might also affect your decision on whether you want to select that journal to publish in. So I hope that that answers your question, KS Tan. Okay. All right. So I think that's all the time we have for today. And thank you very much for all your questions and your interest. I hope the session was useful. After the session closes, there will be a quick survey, just 3 questions. All right. And if you could just help us to fill that out, that'd be great. And then the recording will be shared with all of you tomorrow. All right. So we do have occasional webinars scheduled for Web of Science and JCR as well. So do look out for any promotional materials from your library. Okay. All right. So let me just stop the recording first. So KS Tan, I can address your question, but I will first stop the recording.